Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you with me today because we are diving into something truly fascinating. We're going to unpack the hidden strategic power and the real mechanics behind a concept known as controlling the move. So let's jump right in and see exactly how the absolute masters of strategy don't push their way to victory. They pull.
I want you to picture this scene in your mind. It's Europe, 1814. The most powerful people on the continent have all gathered in Vienna. And on the surface, it's all lavish parties, dancing, eating. Everyone's smiling like the world is totally at peace. But underneath it all, nobody is actually relaxed. Why? Because Napoleon isn't dead. He's gone, sure, but really only in the way a hurricane is gone right before it circles back and rips the roof off your house again. He's just sitting on this tiny island called Elba. It's close enough to matter, too far to easily control, and way, way too close for anyone to actually get a good night's sleep.
So, that sets us up for the trap at Elba and this incredible clash between Talleyrand and Napoleon.
Right in the middle of all this nervous, buzzing political energy sits a guy named Talleyrand. Now, unlike all the emotional amateurs around him, he isn't shouting. He's not issuing threats. He just sits back, watches, and thinks 3 steps ahead. Contrast that quiet, calculated stillness with Napoleon. Napoleon is a guy who is practically vibrating with momentum. He is driven entirely by his ego, his hunger for glory, and this desperate need for speed and attention.
Talleyrand operated on a brutally simple philosophy, and it's one that makes a lot of people pretty uncomfortable. He believed, if you react to your opponent is controlling you, period. And Talleyrand was absolutely not going to be the one reacting. So rather than frantically trying to convince his allies to attack, he did something incredibly quiet. He planted bait. He let these little whispers and rumors spread that France might actually take Napoleon back, that the door was maybe, just maybe, left unlocked. He didn't force a fight at all. He just quietly set the stage.
And Napoleon? Well, he hears these rumors, and because his ego is just so massive, he swallows the bait whole. Step 1, he leaves Elba. Step 2, he gets back to France, the crowds are cheering, and for a hot second it actually feels like a victory. But it's a trap. Step 3, over the next 100 days, Napoleon completely drains his resources, marching his army straight into a coalition that was just waiting for him. Which brings us to Step 4, he gets absolutely crushed at Waterloo. There's no grand escape. Talleyrand didn't have to beat Napoleon with blunt force, he just needed Napoleon to confidently march himself into the exact wrong position.
Let's move on to the psychology of the lure and why the act of chasing almost always fails.
Zoom out with me for a second, because this psychological pattern, it repeats literally everywhere in our everyday lives. Think about it like the difference between running and hunting. If you're a runner chasing a target, you are forcing the action. What happens? The target runs faster, you lose your breath, and you just end up exhausted and super frustrated. But hunting is a totally different game. You wait, you set the bait. The target wanders over on its own terms, thinking it's completely safe. It relaxes. Whenever you force someone to move towards you, you're making them burn their own energy while stepping onto ground that you already control. Which brings us to a concept known as the illusion of choice and the immense power of making them move first.
True strategic control has absolutely nothing to do with blunt force. It is entirely about manipulating desire and attention. We just saw Napoleon happily walking into his own doom. But you also see this in history when Japanese naval commanders purposely forced Russian ships into this agonizingly long, exhausting journey right before a major battle. In the corporate world, you've got business manipulators who suddenly create these fake opportunities that make their competitors panic and scramble. Honestly, even pickpockets do this. Think about those signs that say, "Watch out for pickpockets." Why do they love those? Because the second you read it, you instinctively pat your pocket to check your wallet, and you just politely showed the thief exactly where your valuables are. If you move first, you show your hand. If you make them move first, you hack their psychology.
So, this raises a really fascinating question. Why in the world do people walk willingly into a trap? I mean, human beings aren't stupid, right? The secret is that people don't really respond well to force, but they respond incredibly well to desire. If you make something look attractive enough, people will walk right toward it, completely blind to the giant flashing warning signs right in front of their faces.
And that is exactly what the bait really is. It's a psychological tool so ridiculously tempting that your targets do all the hard work for you. They push themselves forward, falsely believing they're completely in control of their own choices. And that's kind of the terrifying reality of this whole strategy. A person who thinks they are choosing freely, they almost never question the path they're walking on. They genuinely believe they are the masters of their own destiny, right up until the second the trap snaps shut. Now let's talk about the absolute hardest part of this, the skill of restraint and the art of waiting.
Look, every single thing we've talked about today is totally useless if you don't have the emotional discipline to actually pull it off. You cannot panic. You can't force things when a plan just needs a little time to marinate. Restraint means not reacting when every single fiber of your being is screaming at you to react. It means not chasing someone just because you feel a little ignored in the moment. And, maybe most importantly, it means not desperately trying to convince people who haven't even walked into your space yet. The real master-level skill here is simply holding your ground and waiting until the conditions are absolutely perfect.
But there is a massive exception to this rule. There are times when waiting is just downright fatal.
I've got to warn you, strategy is all about context. Waiting isn't some magic spell that works every time. If you have time and you have strength, absolutely, use the lure. Stay disciplined, make them come to you. But if you are weak or you are under a ton of immediate pressure, waiting is just a terrible idea. It'll get you wiped off the map. In those high-pressure moments, you have to strike fast and directly. Knowing exactly which of these two modes you're in, that's what separates a true strategist from someone who's just playing pretend.
So, what does this all mean? If we strip away all of the 19th century historical costumes, the fancy generals, and all the dramatic battlefield stuff, we are left with this brutally simple truth about power. True power is not about doing everything yourself. It's about controlling who moves, controlling exactly when they move, and, most importantly of all, controlling why they think they are moving. That is what real leverage looks like. Which leaves us with a surprisingly simple but incredibly potent thought. The most effective way to gain control is usually the one that feels the least obvious. Stay still. Let the world come to you, and only then decide what happens next. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I want to leave you with this. Take a hard look at your own life right now. Are you the one quietly setting up the board, or are you just out there chasing the bait?